Welcome to the Week 13 edition of the Fantasy Football Brothers DFS podcast. My name is Blake, and I'm here with my younger brother Carson as we talk about players that we like for this week's DFS matchups. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Excited to jump into this. Usually I've been in a $20 contest with my dad and my brother. I got thrown into a $3 one last week and did well. So I'm hoping to continue my streak and maybe prove myself again.
Yeah, Carson was on a bit of a rough stretch, and we had to downgrade him to the $3 contest, and he's just proven himself this season to be a $3 bully.
Yes, that is what I am, apparently. I did have my best week ever when I was in a $3 contest, but yes, that's just how it goes.
All right, let's jump right into it. Let's start with quarterbacks. You want me to go first?
Sure, go ahead. Take your boy Brady.
Well, spoilies. All right.
Yeah?
Well, yeah. Tom Brady, my guy. Here's what I'm thinking. He's been struggling a little bit lately. He's in a bit of a slump, and I think that people are going to be shying away from that. He's $7,200 in this slate. But here's the thing: he's playing Atlanta, and as we know, Tom Brady owns Atlanta. So back in week 2 when they played, Tom Brady threw for 276 passing yards, 5 touchdowns on 24 completions, 36 attempts, even had a rush for 6 yards. So what I'm trying to say is that I think he bounces back against Atlanta, they're a miserable team to watch on defense. So I think that's kind of a no-brainer. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's got to bounce back, for sure. We can move on to Justin Herbert for 6,700. Talked about him in the matchup previews video, playing Cincinnati. Should be an interesting one. He has had 300 plus passing yards in 3 of his past 4 games, so that's good for DFS bonuses. And this Bengals team is much easier to pass against than to rush against, so that should play into his favor to get a lot of passing yards and get a decent amount of touchdowns. You like his weapons. I don't know if I would risk it with Mike Williams, although he could be a good DFS play just because of his boom potential. But Keenan Allen's proven himself, so maybe you could even do a stack. Ekeler's great too. So yeah, and then I guess you could maybe add on to this, but similar reasoning, Burrow in the same matchup. Do you have anything, other to say about him that's unique from Herbert? I don't really know.
Yeah, you like Joe Burrow's weapons, and the way that they've been utilizing Joe Mixon recently. I think he can get involved in the passing game. Jamar Chase has been kind of disappointing lately, but I think he kind of turns up in this game. It seems like of all the games that Chargers and Bengals is going to be a bit of a shootout.
Yeah, they have 2 incredible fantasy offenses, that's for sure. Just great weapons. Last quarterback we'll talk about, and I saw today, I can't believe it, he has now taken the top spot for most passing yards this season. Derek Carr, 6,000 for his DFS price. I found that so crazy. He overtook Brady, I think, who was the leader before him. He had 373 passing yards, only 1 passing touchdown, but on Thanksgiving. So, he gets a ton of yards, which is good for DFS, gives him a really good floor, and I would like to think that he finishes this season with, at least 1 3 touchdown passing game, and I don't know, the football team has turned around and been on a pretty good streak since they've come off their bye, but at the end of the day, this is a really good matchup for him as they are ranked 30th in passing yardage allowed per game and 4th in rushing yardage. So I expect Derek Carr to keep on slinging it, hopefully into the end zone too, though.
Yeah, I'll just say this. Obviously you're getting a discounted price with $6,000 versus Brady's $7,200. But there is a difference there with that multiple touchdown statistic you were talking about. Derek Carr has 17 passing touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Tom Brady also has 9 interceptions, but 30 passing touchdowns.
Yeah, it does make a big difference. Just Derek Carr's unique, though, that he gets those yards, which would gives him a pretty good floor. But we haven't seen him have a big passing touchdown game, and I don't know. Maybe he ends the season, doesn't have one, and I'm going to keep on saying I'm expecting one, but I feel like it's got to happen. It's got to happen. We can move on to running backs. I'll let you talk about the elite guys of Jonathan Taylor, Austin Ekeler, and Joe Mixon.
Yeah, honestly, if you can find a way to get 1 or even 2 of these guys into your lineup, it'd be really tough to get all 3, but If you can find a way to include one of these guys at least, you can't go wrong, really. Jonathan Taylor has been on an insane tear, scoring at least one rushing touchdown in every game since week 4. Austin Ekeler always viable to, have 5 to 6 catches in a game and get his touches on the ground as well. And then Joe Mixon, as we talked about earlier, he's just be getting more involved. He's got 58 total rushes in his past 2 games combined, 4 rushing touchdowns in that 2-game span, and it looks like just under 300 rushing yards. So he's on a really good pace right now. And as we all know, you can run on the Chargers.
Yes. I can kind of do the other end of this strategy. If you want to go more cheap guys to pay up at wide receiver, and we'll talk about big spending options there too, here's some lower price guys: Elijah Mitchell, Antonio Gibson, and Jamal Williams. And real quick, I just want to tell you how many touches they each had last week. Elijah Mitchell had 32, Antonio Gibson had 36, and Jamal Williams had 20, and Swift was there for part of the game. He left pretty early, but he still ended up with 20 touches, and I expect even more with Swift already being ruled out for that game. And we saw Jamal Williams in week 1 have 8 receptions. Now, I don't think he can do that and also take the bulk of all the carries, but it shows you that this team is willing to get him involved on both sides of the offense, just like they were with Swift. So at a price of $5,400 for Jamal Williams, I feel like you can't go too wrong. And I've spent more time explaining him because I think Elijah Mitchell and Antonio Gibson are a little bit more of no-brainers, especially Elijah Mitchell. I mean, he's had games without receptions, but he had 5 this game, and I expect that to continue, at least to some degree. And he's also getting all the rushing work that gives him really good floor. And Antonio Gibson, he just looked really good Monday Night Football, and a lot of people that probably had him had grown skeptical of him. He had a good stretch from like week 3 to 5, and then a really bad stretch from week 6 to 8. But he's kind of back on a good stretch, I would say. And I believe in him, I guess I could say. And he gets a lot of touchdowns. He didn't last week, but he has the potential to get, 2 rushing touchdowns, and that's really good for DFS, for sure.
Yeah, three really good guys that are at or below $6,000 there.
Yeah. All right, for wide receivers, I mean, I guess I can throw out these names so you can talk about more of your guys on the cheaper end. But, I mean, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Keenan Allen. I mean, Cooper Kupp there's not much explaining that you need to do. He's averaging 26.8 DFS points per week. That's absurd. And we're not seeing any other player do anything like that. I mean, like I jokingly said in matchup previews, week 12 was his first sub-20 fantasy point game since week 5. So he's just extremely talented and has such a high floor. Justin Jefferson's done amazing too. And against Detroit, that's not a defense that scares you at all. And like we said, Blake did the analysis in the matchup previews. Justin Jefferson got his fair share. He had 7 receptions for 124 yards the last time they faced the Lions this season. And then Keenan Allen has really taken the front seat again of this offense and is just
Mr. Reliable.
Yes. I think it's like the switch flicked on at week 9. Since week 9, he's had 12, 8, 9, and 7 receptions. Like, that is the Keenan Allen we're used to. And he's not extremely expensive. He's the 4th most expensive wide receiver, much less than Kupp and also pretty considerably less than Jefferson. But yeah, he's still a high-priced, big spender, big return player. So, again, if you want to maybe pay up on running backs, we can talk about the cheaper wide receivers.
Yeah, so let's talk about Hunter Renfrow, $5,800. We just talked about Derek Carr and what we think he'll be able to do against this Washington defense. I mean, similar to, Hunter Renfrow's stat lines have kind of been reminiscent of Keenan Allen, but just kind of a less impressive stat line. Regardless, he's been getting high to mid-teens in pretty much every game this season. He's very reliable. He is the number 1 pass catcher in this offense, and I like him. I mean, it's a good matchup, so you feel good about that. Similar price, $5,700 for Michael Pittman Jr. He is playing the Texans, and there's a narrative around how T.Y. Hilton always goes off against the Texans, so maybe he does that again this week. But I definitely trust Michael Pittman more in this offense. He is the more reliable pass catcher for the Colts. Carson Wentz has been very good as of late, keeping his turnovers down, and that creates opportunities for players like Michael Pittman to capitalize on that. And then lastly, I think I'll talk about either of these guys, 5,600. You've got Darnell Mooney and Brandon Aiyuk.
Mm-hmm.
These are guys that, going into the season, they were not expected to be the lead receiving options for their team. And Brandon Aiyuk has not been that player for the season, but he looks like he's going to be in position to do it this week with Deebo Samuel likely out. And Darnell Mooney, something happened with Allen Robinson. He just kind of fell off the face of the earth.
It's so sad.
And, yeah, it is, but Darnell Mooney is capitalizing on it. In his last 2 weeks, he's combined for 24 targets. He's got 10 catches and 244 receiving yards over those 2 games. This guy's just getting the looks, and he's delivering on these looks. It's not the most efficient, so if it's anywhere near above 50% on his targets versus catches, you're going to pay off with this guy. And then similarly with Brandon Aiyuk, he's been on a very good stretch recently. Low single or high single digit targets in his past few games, and just delivering on those looks. And the defense they're playing, Seattle, doesn't scare you. So I like these guys at these prices.
I agree. I think you do have a lot of good cheap options at wide receiver this week. We can move on to tight ends. Mark Andrews, 6,000. I watched a few highlights from that Ravens-Browns game, and you could just see that in one drive, Lamar's running away from everybody, chucks it up, Mark Andrews is there. When they're in the red zone, he's running away from everybody, chucks it up, Mark Andrews is there. I mean, he's just reliable for the big plays whenever Lamar needs him, and that gives you good fantasy returns for him too. Obviously, he showed his ceiling in his Week 5 performance where he had 44.7. He hasn't had another game over 20, but it shows you that he is a very important role in this offense, and he does have a really good floor as well because he's just always involved. So at 6,000, he's the most expensive tight end this week other than Waller, but he's not playing. Yeah.
Likely not playing, yeah.
Likely not playing. He's doubtful. And we'll talk about that situation a little bit more in a second. But I'll let you talk about Gronkowski.
Yeah, my boy Gronk. As long as Tom Brady's the quarterback, I trust in Gronkowski. Every game that he's been healthy in, he's been just a lock, a lineup lock. And his last 2 games, 9 targets and 8 targets, 7 catches and 6 catches, high yardage, 123 last week and 71 in week 11. I mean, he's just a stud, and it's crazy that he is still producing, given his injury history and everything else with his career. But you love to see him succeed, and I'm thinking that he's going to do that again this week. And then let's talk about who else.
Foster Moreau.
Yeah, Foster Moreau. So this is in the likely event that Darren Waller misses this week. And we can see how he performed back in Week 7 when he was given the main job. 6 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown on 6 targets. I mean, he's basically going to slide into that Darren Waller role, which we know in their offense is an important piece. And I think, again, the matchup doesn't scare you. It's like with Hunter Renfrow. I think he's in a good position to be successful at $2,700. Obviously a good cheap option. And then lastly, let's talk about James O'Shaughnessy. And you might be thinking, who?
But I now understand. Hold on. I now understand why we're bringing him up, because we tend to always talk about Dan Arnold, and since he's injured, therefore...
That's correct. James O'Shaughnessy slides in the Dan Arnold role, which apparently for the Jaguars is the lead pass catcher. So, we talked about it in the main show about, is it going to be Marvin Jones? Is it going to be Laviska Shenault? Honestly, who knows? But I think that the proven asset in that offense outside of James Robinson is the tight end position. And so James O'Shaughnessy at 2,600, you're kind of throwing a dart with that, but he could certainly pay off given how the Jaguars use the tight end.
I think at the beginning of the season or like preseason, Tim Tebow was signed as a Jaguars tight end. Imagine that reality if he stayed there and they used the tight end like they always do. That'd be so crazy. Yeah, I think we're not really gonna talk about defenses. So I guess
I think the best options the Miami Dolphins against a Giants-led team by Mike Glennon.
Yeah.
And but there's really not a whole lot to cover, so we're gonna wrap it up here. Good luck to you guys in all of your games this weekend, and enjoy the football. And we'll talk to you next week.
Peace out, everybody.